So now hopefully you've watched Edgar Schein's interview and his discussions on what culture is. And Dr. Schein really is one of our foremost thinkers on the idea of organizational culture. So now we want to talk about where culture comes from. And where does it develop from? How does it doesn't just come out of thin air. And the longer a organization exists, the more chances it has to develop culture, and the more its culture will evolve over time, and the stronger in many cases that culture will become. Now, the first place that culture comes from is the beliefs, values, and assumptions of the founders of the organization. Now, our organization is old enough that some of the founders don't really matter, but really this also goes back, if we think about the Navy and Marine Corps in our origins at Tun Tavern and with the Continental Navy, and even back to our traditions from the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines from before the Revolution. You can still see some of those influences on the culture that we have today. And so the idea here is that even though it may not be a very significant effect this many years forward, there is still some effect from those founders and the beliefs, values, and assumptions of those founders. And then the organization learns, and particularly the members of the organization, the people in the organization learn as an organization evolves. And an organization evolves and it has to cope with various problems. There's going to be problems of external adaptation and internal integration within the organization. Honestly, a great example of this is COVID-19 as a external threat to the Naval Academy and the way that we do things. Before COVID-19 came along, the idea that we would ever have online teaching at the Naval Academy was anathema. It wasn't even something that was considered. And yet, as an organization, we had to cope with that and adapt to this new environment. And so the organization changed with it. And I think what we'll see going forward is that the culture of the Naval Academy itself is going to change as we learn how to cope with the new environment after COVID-19, and we evolve to match that. And that's going to have a long-term influence on the culture of the Naval Academy. When an organization copes with external threats or even internal threats, and it comes up with a solution that works, the members of the organization come to believe in that solution, and then they learn to teach it to new members of the organization. This is how the culture gets passed down from the people who used to be here. And so the culture that gets passed down even before we get there to the people who follow us in an organization will continue on, because we're always teaching new members. Now, that said, new people always come into the organization, and they bring with them values, beliefs, and assumptions. You will often hear on your ship, when you get to your second ship, and even on your first ship, as you're there longer, when people come in, you'll often hear this term, well, on my last ship, or on USS last ship. Maybe one of the most spoken phrases in the Navy. And the idea of, and that's really an example of people bringing in new beliefs, values, and assumptions into the unit. Now, sometimes those are incorporated and sometimes they aren't, but that's another source of culture. And there are other sources as well, but in particular, we need to focus is the actions of us as leaders. Leaders play an outsized role in influencing the culture. So in this series of videos, we're going to learn a little bit more about the culture. You're going to watch another video, actually another two videos about various artifacts of the culture and how we diagnose the culture and how we understand the culture. And then we're going to get into how leaders can influence the culture, because this is where the rubber really meets the road. And this is a big part of your job as future leaders.